Welcome to the State of Licensing, Educator Licensing. My name is Malia Height, and I am the Educator Licensing Coordinator. It is my pleasure to be here with you and to talk about educator licensing and all of the many changes that are coming in the next few weeks. Some of them have already happened and some are still pending. Before we get started, or actually now that we're started, I would be very interested to know, what is your burning question? If you have one question that you're like, oh, if I learn nothing else, I need to know the answer to this question, can you please put that in the chat box? I want to know what your questions are so I can ensure that I weave them in somewhere into the presentation. It's so fun to see some very familiar names and faces.
Morning.
Good morning. Okay. There are fantastic questions that you are all asking, and some of them have already planned to answer, and others I haven't specifically planned to address, but I've written a few of them down and we'll answer them. There's going to be plenty of time at the end of the presentation today to talk about what are some of the more specific questions that you, some more specific questions is what we'll get to. Okay. So let's get started. How many of you are familiar with the Thomas Guide? You can chat, you can raise your hand if you can find your hand, that option. Yeah, the Thomas Guide is the precursor to all Google apps and maps. I use them all the time growing up, and this actually is the area I grew up in, California, in San Diego, in El Cajon and Fletcher Hills. There actually is I can identify exactly on this spot where I lived. Here's what the Thomas Guide looks like in practice.
Old school children, you take the time to pull over our traffic. All right.
Oh no, no audio. I was afraid of that. Trying to get the audio on WebEx is a little bit of a struggle. This is what the Thomas Guide was. It was a giant atlas that was about 1.5 inches thick. And you had to go back and forth to find which page is it on and which grid is it on. And then I've got to find it. And then when I find it, then I have to figure out where I'm going. And the process to try and get there is quite time intensive. And as we think about educator licensing, how many of us feel like sometimes navigating educator licensing is as complex as trying to use an 1.5-inch thick atlas with lots of references and cross references, and I've got to go to this page, and then I got to go to this page, and well, but it was on this page, but now I ran out of page, and so I've got to go to this other page, which isn't actually the next page over. It's like 40 or 50 pages later, and it's so confusing. And that was exactly what educators and administrators and everyone from the field felt about navigating this educator licensing. And so we had this very complex system. And the reason it was hard to navigate was because there were 16 different license levels and 25 different pathways to qualify for those license levels. And that's crazy pants for sure. And so it makes sense that we were confused and we didn't know how to get from one place to the next. And so in thinking about this process, the Utah State Board noticed that we were lost, we were confused, we were super disoriented, and we were often bewildered when it came to licensing. I see lots of nodding of heads. But this was unfortunately where we landed, and it was hard to navigate. And so the Utah State Board of Education, in collaboration with the Utah State legislatures, simplified the system. And I think that that overwhelmingness of where we were to where we are now, or going to be in a few weeks, sometimes becomes a little bigger in our minds than we're used to. And so when they simplified this system, it really is a straight shot. There are 3 license levels and 3 pathways to qualify for those license levels, and that's it. So we're going to talk about those 3 license levels, the 3 pathways to those license levels, and then some of the specifics that are around each of the license levels and how we at USBE are supporting or planning to support you in getting your educators to a licensed state. So as of July 1st, there are only 3 levels of license: the professional, the associate, and the LEA specific. That's it, just 3, not 16, just 3. And the 3 pathways to qualify for these licenses are a university-based program, some alternate preparation program, or local school board authority. And that's it. There's just 3 ways to get there. So we're going to talk about these 3 pathways and how they relate to the license levels and how we can get there. So on our very simplified roadmap, the destination for all educators is a professional educator license. In the state of Utah last year, there were 36,587 licensed educators. So we're not talking about a small number of people, but that's our destination. So how does that destination relate to where I am today? If you or one of your educators has a level 1 educator license, a level 2-3 educator license, or is an international guest teacher, they will automatically convert into a professional educator license July 1st. That happens. The other way to get there is 2 ways. If they're not already there, there's 2 ways to get there. You can be in a university-based educator prep program in Utah with an approved Utah program. The other way, or the other lane, is the alternate educator preparation program. And we'll talk a lot about what this alternate ed prep program can be or looks like. There's a few different ways to get there, but that's it. There's 2 lanes to get to the professional educator license. Nothing else, no crazy ways, no back roads, that's it. There's only 2 ways there. So to get the associate educator license, there are a couple of qualifications. And the associate educator license is if you're on the road to the destination of the professional license, but you're not there yet. You have to be employed. You have to be either enrolled in a university program or enrolled in an LEA or an alternate program. Those are your 2 options to qualify for an educator license, for an associate educator license. You're in the car, you're on the way to the destination, you're working toward professional educator license. The other way that you can be in here and not currently enrolled is if you have already been approved and accepted to the APT and ARL program. The pathway to APT and ARL is no longer available for new candidates. That door has closed, but if you have an educator who has been approved to the ARL program or qualified for the APT and is currently employed, then they will qualify for an associate educator license. They're in the car, they're on the path, they're working toward professional licensure. So let's talk about this alternate educator preparation program, which we call the APPLE. APPLE is the alternate pathway to professional educator license. And it is not the associate level license. This is something that is that I've gotten a lot of questions about. The associate level license just means you're in the car, you're on the way. The APPLE program is one of the lanes you can be in with that car. Okay? It's not the license, but you need the license to be in the program. So an APPLE program can be designed and approved by one LEA or one local education agency, or it can be a consortium of LEAs or charters. For example, we have a couple of the regional education service centers that have combined to create a consortium to support several LEAs with their alternate preparation program. We also have a consortium of charter schools that have combined their efforts to be able to support their educators at all of their charter schools. Either of these options is fine. You can work together as a group, or you can be as one LEA to support educators in an alternate educator preparation program. However, if you're going to use the APPLE program to prepare your educators, this is only available in the following 3 areas: in elementary education, secondary education, and CTE. Oops, that was quite quick. We'll get there. So there is a list of approved APPLE programs that are on our website, and as the programs have been approved, then we will add those to the website. So let's talk a little bit about this APPLE program, because there are a few programs that have already been approved, and there are some that are still working on their application. So the LEAs are not required to have this option. As an LEA, you are not required to have an APPLE or an alternate preparation program. It is not a requirement. If this is not the year for you to start that, this is not the year. And I understand fully that we have a lot of things going on this year that have never existed before in education. And so this may not be the year for you to try and add one more thing on top of everything else. You can absolutely add an APPLE program in the future. If you want to add next year or the year after, that's totally acceptable. The applications for this school year are due August 31st. That's when they just need to get turned into us so that we can approve them. We'll talk about special ed. There are lots of questions about special ed and the Apple program. So you have to email your application in. Here's the email address, and I will provide you with a link for so that you can have all of these slides following the presentation so that you can reference them. So the question about special ed. So currently, the only areas that are allowed in the Apple program are elementary, secondary, and CTE. Special education is not currently included in the Apple program. However, special education, Utah State Board of Education is working on a special education alternate program for special ed. Okay. If they're going to be doing a dual license area, the only license area that is currently supported, the only license areas currently supported are elementary, secondary, and CTE. If it is special education, that program is being developed, it's being finalized, but will be available later this summer after July 1st. Physical education is an endorsement that you would attach onto the license area of either elementary or secondary education. Okay. So the content areas, the endorsements are available within each of the license areas. Okay. Just cruise on through. Okay, so how do I navigate this pathway, this Apple program? Because the navigation can be a little tricky. First things you have to do is you have to have a professional license plan, a PLP. And we at USBE have a template that we can provide for you, and you will receive training for the Apple program. I'm just seeing a question. For the special ed license, oh, perfect. Thank you. Kimberly Howard is on the ball answering questions. She's also putting some very helpful links in the chat box for you. So USB will be providing the template as well as training to help you to create and develop and make sure these professional license plans will support your educators in obtaining a professional license. We will also be supporting you with the transcript analysis training, as well as specific support for Apple directors and other program support, whoever is on your list of your Apple program. The contact for Apple program is Lisa McLaughlin, and she is heading up the Apple program. She's new to licensing and coming to us from assessment with a depth of knowledge about educator licensing programs, and has worked in universities helping them to complete their accreditation, and will really be just a magnificent support to you at the LEA level as you're developing and implementing this alternate route to education licensing. So if we're in the cart and I need an associate license, then there are some things I have to do. The first thing is I have to complete the Pedagogical Canvas modules. That is, it's a link that lives on our website and is something that all educators who have an associate license need to have, unless they're adding a license area or adding an endorsement. Educators who already have a professional educator license do not need to complete these modules. They have met the basics of these pedagogy requirements through their professional license preparation. They need to be content eligible. And so what that means for our 3 areas, because remember in Apple, there's only 3 areas, In elementary, it means they have to pass the Praxis 5001, which is the combination of the 4 contents: mathematics, English language arts, social studies, and science. They have to pass that. And we'll talk a little bit later about Praxis, but this is available to everyone from home right now. For secondary education, they can meet the content requirement in 2 different ways. Either they can pass the Praxis, or if they have a major in the field that is the same, then they would qualify. For example, if I wanted to have a license, if I wanted to get an associate license in secondary education license area and add a mathematics content endorsement, I could do it by being a mathematics major. However, if I were a statistics major, which some might argue is similar, because it's not the same, it's not identical, then a statistics major would not count. Okay. All of the trainings will be definitely posted. We can get them in Midas for sure. If they have already been part of APT and ARL, then they're not part of your Apple program and they don't have to do the pedagogical modules. Okay, for CTE, because CTE is, they have their own content requirements. It's endorsement specific and they can meet those requirements through experience within the field, other licensing or other testing requirements, other kinds of competencies to ensure that they have the requirement for the CTE endorsements. Okay, so we've got our path. Our destination is the professional educator license. If you're on the way there, you're in the car and you've got an associate educator license, you're in one of these 2 lanes. Either your university-based prep program or an alternate educator prep program like the Apple. If your educator's enrolled in a university-based program, then the educator can either request the associate license through their university, or they can apply for the associate license through USBE, and we will verify with the university that they're enrolled and then qualify them for the associate license. But what happens if you're not in the car, you're not on the road, and you still want to be a teacher? Then you're going to qualify, or your educators will need an LEA specific license. LEA specific license or license areas or endorsements are not for your educators who are actively working toward becoming a professional educator. Now, it's possible that maybe they're just waiting to get enrolled in a university program. Then an LEA specific license would be appropriate, that they just can't get into one of these other two options. They don't have a seat in the car yet, okay? For special ed especially, we're going to talk about that one. So LEA specific license. The LEA specific license is available for all license areas, including special education, okay? There was a new rule that was passed last month that the LEA specific license is available for special education and preschool special education for 1 year only. And that 1 year is intended to, if you're trying to get in the car and you can't get into the car quick enough to get on the road, then we can give them an LEA specific license so that then they can enroll in a university program or enroll in the Apple S, or the special education Apple program that is going to be hosted by the Utah State Board of Education. For all of the other license areas, you can qualify for 1, 2, or 3 years. And we'll talk about the process of what is this LEA specific license process. I know that there were several people who had that question as their burning question. Computer is very slow today. So LEA specific licenses are available to add license areas or endorsements. Both are available. So if you already have a secondary educator or a professional license in secondary education, but your endorsement is mathematics, but your LEA wants you to teach language arts, then you could qualify for an LEA specific license in that endorsement area. Okay, you don't have to do the whole license, you can add just the endorsement. Here is something to note. The LEA specific license that's coming, that is our park bench, is very different than the current LEA specific competency based or level 1, level 2. They're very different from the district specific. And so it's helpful to think about it as a brand new, totally different license area or license level, because it is. There's different requirements and different ways to get there. Here is the process for the LEA specific license or endorsements. First, the LEA has to have a policy of how they're going to use the LEA specific license. The governing board, so the school board, can approve or must approve these licenses and endorsements in a public meeting. They will send an official letter of request and assurances to the superintendent, and then post their assignments in Cactus. You have to have a disclosure, and we're going to talk about each one of these specifically. A disclosure on the school website about the LEA specific license. So I see lots of questions. If they're already enrolled in the SAEP, then their SAEP endorsement will be converted to an associate level endorsement. There's a couple questions about renewals. Associate licenses can be extended for up to for 1 year, except for special ed. Special ed is not an option. And then for the LEA specific, after 3 years, you have to apply to the superintendent. When we say superintendent, the superintendent means Utah State Board of Education. Superintendent is the representative of the USB. So let's talk about this official letter of requests and assurances. We did provide you with a sample letter that's in the process example, or the process document that we've been provided, or we provided to you. And within those letters or attached to that process, we've also included a spreadsheet so that you can load all of your educator data in there for all of the educators that you're going to be approving for LEA specific licenses or endorsements. Additionally, you'll need to post the educator assignments in Cactus. And that's just like you've done forever and ever and ever. That's what you're going to be doing. Eventually, and we're still working on some of the specifics because it's brand new to Cactus, is to add that license request in Cactus. It's going to be similar to how we have previously done the letter of authorization, but it is going to be for the LEA specific license. So you don't have to approve the license for all 3 years. You can do 1 year or 2 years or 3 years. After 3 years, so if they renew it for the second year and then, or the LEA grants it for the second year and then the LEA grants it for the third year, after the third year, then you would have to request from the superintendent, USBE, for an extension if you need to be longer than those 3 years. and you're going to have to justify why it makes sense for the educator to be on an LEA specific license rather than get into the car and move towards professional licensure. The LEA policy, there's not a template. Steve Diamond was kind enough to share his, the Canyon School District policy. We're going to talk a little bit about what that policy is in just a minute. Oh, I feel like I have missed a letter or a slide. No, it didn't. The LEA policy is outlined in the LEA policy is outlined in the process letter that it will be on the website. It's not yet. Our website is in the middle of a lot of flux, as is everything in licensing right now. But if you send an email to us, we can send it out to you, no problem. So talking about what needs to be on the website. First of all, we need to note that it's the school's website, not the LEA website, okay? There needs to be a link to your LEA's policy, whatever your policy is. You have to have a statement that says, we employ educators with an LEA specific license area or endorsements. There needs to be an explanation of all the different license types, like what does it mean to be professional license, to have an associate license or have an LEA specific license. And then the percentage of the license types by FTE. And this is, I know, the place where people are having the biggest questions. They're like, what does that even mean? Does it mean like percentage of teachers who have that? We're working right now on how we can build a report so that you can pull it straight out of Cactus for that to determine the FTE or percentages of how they're qualified. So we're working on that so that it will be available to you after the rollover in July. Additionally, you need to provide a link to the educator lookup tool, and that's just the normal lookup tool that has existed already for years. So what we're talking about, oh, here it is, even the percentage. I knew it was here. So the Cactus report will, we're determining how we can provide that information to make it really easy for you. The explanation part, that is something that I'm going to write it down. So we can provide you with some sample language that will express what is a professional license, an associate license, and the LEA specific. I'm just writing it down so that I don't forget. It's thinking really hard, my computer. Maybe. Oh, there it is. Okay, percentage of license types by FTE. Okay, so one of the requirements that is part of your LEA's responsibility for the LEA specific licenses is that you train those educators in the 4 areas that are identical to the pedagogical modules. It's the classroom management, special education, the teaching standards, and ethics. And those 4 modules currently for the associate license live on Canvas. And because they already are developed and they already exist and they already provide the same information, there is an export package of that Canvas module or the Canvas course that is available to you. We're happy to share that. And if that is something that you want, that export file, if you send an email to licensing@schools.utah.gov, we can absolutely get you those Canvas modules. This is also going to be the place where you can go to request the LEA specific process until it gets loaded up onto our website. So what happens when the road is closed? Because there have been a lot of roads that are closed because of COVID. So specifically the two areas that are we're having currently the most issues are around background checks and practice exams. So for fingerprinting, absolutely the first stop is they need to start the background check. They go into the educator licensing online and do that background check, start it now. The fingerprinting places are opening. There is some delay there, and you'll want to make sure that you call ahead and make sure that if they need an appointment or bring a mask or whatever the things are that they need, that they can have all of those things available. This is something that you have to know. If we get to the fall and you have an educator that has not cleared a background check, they cannot be in the classroom. They can't have contact with students. That is state law and that is federal law, and we can't grant a waiver for that, and it really is not in best practice for us to do that. So in talking about praxis tests, the praxis centers did close for a number of months and are starting to reopen. However, in the interim, praxis has started a testing from home model where you do the test on your home computer in your home environment, and almost every single content area is available to test from home. For those areas that are not available to test from home, then the testing centers are opening. Specifically, secondary science and secondary ELA are the two content areas that are not available to test from home, and so they can take the test from the testing center. Just asked a question about going from the level 1 to the level 2 in the current system. So if they're going to upgrade from level 1 to level 2, they have to complete the professional learning praxis, or the, I can't even remember now, the praxis that is about the teaching part, not the content. Thank you, PLT. Thanks, Cassidy, for the save. If they need to do that before July 1 of their license expires June 30th, then they'll need to do that. If their license doesn't expire until the following year, then their license will be a professional license, and they can use the new renewal rules to renew their license, which is, again, way simpler. Instead of 10 categories, there's 4 categories. And instead of 200 hours, there's 100 hours. And after July 1st, anyone who needs to upgrade or renew their license will be able to do that using either the old system or the new system. Although, to be entirely frank, the new system is way simpler. ARL and APT need to follow their current plan in order to turn into the professional license. And that's because we don't want to change the road for them. They still get to follow their same plan. Yeah, the ARL applicants don't have to take the PLT. So for the 2 content areas where there's some difficulty getting into the testing center to take those, if if those are the situations, then we're considering and we'll grant any extensions for those things. We're trying to be really flexible of educators, especially if they're working on their license requirements and they need this one class that was canceled because of COVID. We're trying to be really extend and flexible when we can. Yes, so if someone has a license that expires at the end of the month and they can't get their background check in, they can use the new process after July 1st to renew, or the old process. Either is fine. So the last thing I want to talk about before we get to all of the many questions, which I'm sure are there, is that the Google Maps of licensing is coming. We're not going to have to use this crazy Thomas guide with 16 different license level. We're going to have our own Utah app. And that Utah app is USIMS. And it's going to be really a very dynamic and personalized way to help us navigate the road to professional educator licenses. And it will tell us when to turn left and when to turn right and when we have to stop, and it'll recalculate if you make a wrong turn. But until we get there, right now, we just have to go with our very basic. There's 3 types of license levels, and there's 2 ways to get to the professional educator license. So that's coming. It's coming, hopefully, fingers crossed, by the end of 2020, but we just don't know yet. So here's the link to the slides is on the left. Here's my contact information. And then if you're looking for something specific, the licensing experts are going to be right here. At this point, my whole intent is just to answer questions. And I think, there were a couple questions up top. Oh, the EYE. So if you've got a new educator, the EYE, early years educator portfolios, are no longer required with the Apple program. Okay, the Apple program is its own program. Now there are some requirements for LEAs to support new educators that have fewer than 3 years of experience, and those requirements can be found in, I think it's 308 are the rules, but Cami Dupree is the contact for the early years support for those educators. So I wanted to make sure I hit that and that. Okay, so what questions do you have? Look at that. The out-of-state licensing process is also going to be much simpler. It will, if an educator comes from another state and they have a what we call a standard level license and a year of experience, then they will qualify for the professional license. Yeah, the highly qualified mathematics and special ed is still there. A teacher still needs to have a license area of special education, as well as the special ed mathematics endorsement to be highly qualified to teach a resource mathematics course, grades 7 through 12. But if you're trying to go to the Apple S, if you're looking for an Apple S, then you're going to want to talk to Kathy Webb, and she will be able to answer any questions about that, because that has still not been fully finalized. Great question, Amanda. LEA-specific licenses and endorsements do not have to be applied for and approved before the end of June. Absolutely not. They can be applied for and approved anytime throughout the school year. If you have someone that you need to have start in November, then your LEA can approve them in the October board meeting, and they can be granted that license area. Teachers coming from out of state and have taught for multiple years will not need to take the content praxis exam if they have a standard level license from another state. Teachers who are enrolled in a university program and listed in Cactus, a teacher is enrolled in a university program and a student in Cactus, do they need to apply before they graduate? You don't have to apply for an associate license before you graduate. Yes, Brent, if they're like in the SAEP for the special ed math endorsement or a math endorsement, then that will be an associate level endorsement. This is a great question. Currently, anybody who has a K-6 license area or a 1-8 license area, because those grade qualifiers drop off and everything becomes an educator or an elementary education license, it qualifies them to teach grades kindergarten through grade 8. If they're in those middle grade contents, they'll need to have a content endorsement to teach that. So if you've got somebody with a Cactus number and they went out of state and then they got a license and then they taught and now they're coming back, they need to apply for the professional level license through the out of state process. So the eminence is going to be through the LEA specific. So anybody who is going to be outside of a professional license or an associate license will fall under the LEA specific. If you have a licensed teacher who wants to teach CTE, they can go through the Apple program. They don't have to, but they can. Somebody who has a mild moderate, so special ed, somebody who has a mild moderate endorsement will need a severe endorsement to teach in special ed and the other way around. You have to have the endorsement that qualifies you for that assignment. And so if they don't have the assignment, either they would need to enroll the Apple S program or they would need an LEA specific license. This is a great question. Anyone who currently has an LEA specific license, the LEA specific or district specific, those are going to expire on June 30th. They don't convert into anything, they're expired. And so if you have educators who are currently on an LEA specific license or district specific license or endorsement, then you have to make some sort of a plan for that educator, either through the new LEA specific licensing program or licensing process or the associate. So anyone with, if it's not an ARL or APT, or they already have a level 1, 2, 3, they have to have a plan. All of the other license areas and endorsement areas are going to be expired. Currently, the only other content competency is the praxis exam or a major in the field. Beyond that, it won't, there's no other way. So someone who has an early childhood license area will qualify you to teach grades K through 3. If you're trying to give them an assignment area of 4th grade, 5th grade, etc., then they will need to have the elementary education license area to be qualified. K3 and birth 5 licenses are disappearing. They're converting to early childhood. So R277301 no longer prohibits the LEA specific license. That was approved by the board last month. It is currently in public comment period. It'll go into effect July 7th. So if you're looking for where, in fact, let me just do this. If you're looking for where the license areas can be found, they're on the board rules, and you want to look for board rule status. That's how we can, that's how you can find like the new or updated versions will live there until they're publicly posted, but you can read all of those things. Educators who graduate from an out-of-state program that need to take state tests to get a license in that state, yes, they absolutely have to take, they have to have the professional, like standard level license in another state in order to be on a professional educator license in Utah. Okay, so if you're in the LEA specific and you're trying to get into the associate license, there's only 2 ways to be in the car. Remember the car. We can only be 2 ways in the car. You either have to be enrolled in an educator preparation program or in the Apple program. That's it. Those are your 2 lanes. If you're not in those 2 lanes, you cannot qualify for an associate educator license. If the other state has granted them a standard level license, then they don't have to take the praxis here too, because we're assuming that their educator preparation program has made sure they're content eligible. They've met content requirements there. If they don't have any experience, they finish their program in Colorado and then they move to Utah, then they will be able to have the associate level license for 1 year while they're finishing up the pedagogical performance assessment. So for the associate endorsement, they have to meet the content requirement, which is the praxis, or if they want to be in the SAEP, the 9 credits. But the SAEP is going away after the change. So if they have a content specific degree like history, then they can qualify for a history endorsement. But it has to be the same in their major, has to be the same as the content that they're trying to get. So if their degree is in communications, they don't qualify for an English language arts endorsement. Right now, we are still processing applications. We have just a massive backlog. We're moving as quick as we can, but trying to get through all of the applications it's just big work. And so right now we're working in some areas with a 4 to 6 week return window, and in other areas, like the associate applications, a little bit longer. But we're working as quick as we can. Okay, other questions? I'm going to direct your CTE questions to Jonathan Fry. He's the over CTE endorsements. Those worlds are a little bit, they're different. It's a different process. General education preschool teachers do not have to have licenses currently. If they're doing special education, then they would need the special education, the preschool special ed. Otherwise, there's no license requirement for general ed. Sherry, and maybe you can even just turn on your microphone. I'm not sure I understand the question.
Okay, so I'm asking it. Sorry, can you hear me now?
I can, yes.
Okay. So we currently have a teacher that, a lot of our teachers are worried about their years, transferring over to the degrees. Are they going to lose their years? I'm so new to all this process, so I'm not sure how the old process worked and how it's going to work with the new process.
So a level 1, if they have a level 1 license, that's going to convert to a professional educator license.
Okay, was there a level 1 as they were trying to work towards their associates?
There's an APT level 1. So if they just took a test and then got their APT license, then they need to be, that would convert to an associate, and yes, their years will carry over.
Okay, I think that's what it is. She wasn't a level 1 APT teacher, and so
yeah,
make sure that her years were going to transfer over and she wasn't going to have to start all over.
Yep, your years will cancel or will carry over. Yes.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Malia.
Sure.
Hey, Malia, this is Jonathan. Let me answer that CTE question real quick.
Oh, glory be. Thank you, Jonathan.
Not a problem. So when it comes to, and Nathan, please clarify if I don't state this correctly. When you're talking about CTE is very course driven with their endorsements. And so if you're looking at a specific course that you're wanting to teach within your LEA, the best way is to work with the specific USBE specialist on the requirements through the endorsement process that specific teacher would need to go through. And so that would be the easiest way, would be just to reach out to the specialist, or you can even reach out to myself, and we'll get the information you need to help get your teacher qualified to teach. So again, hopefully that's kind of what you're asking, Nathan. Again, we can help individually on that process to make sure your teacher knows the direction they need to go with.
Okay, there's a few more questions. So for the educator competency section within the Apple program, those competencies do not have to be done through an approved program or university. The LEA can do that, but if that is your plan, then you need to provide syllabi for what specifically the educators will be required to do and or how they will demonstrate those competencies. It's total, you absolutely can, but you do need to provide that. So if you have someone who's currently in the ARL program, then they're going to be converted to an associate level license, and they can continue with their ARL plan for professional licensure. If they're not already in the ARL program, then they would need to look at another option. But if they're already admitted to the ARL program, then they're already on the path, they're already in the car, they're on their way. Yeah, so if you've got someone who is going to be in your Apple program and has an associate license, but needs to get the professional educator license, then you have to finish their program, their plan. All of the competencies that are within the Apple program, they need to be met. They have to pass the pedagogical performance assessment. All of those things need to happen. So if someone's in the ARL program, you have 3 years to get through the entire program. If you aren't through your program in 3 years, then your LEA is going to have to look at some other option to help you be licensed. Okay.
Malia, I see one other CTE question. Let me address real quick. It's asking about the K-8 options with CTE. And this is an area that we are starting to develop. Let me throw out a name. It's Ashley Higgs is our specialist that deals mostly with our K-8 area. We do have other specialists that will deal with specific areas in the middle grades, your junior high courses. But with those, there is a way that we can have those teachers get endorsed with, again, specific courses. And you'd be working with, and you start initially with Ashley Higgs, and then from there they can provide you any more direction that that specific teacher may need. Anything under 6th grade is usually a little different. That works with teaching and learning more with the STEM coordinator there, or the STEM specialist. But usually it's your 6-8 courses or those that we're dealing with CTE.
Yeah, thanks so much, Jonathan. And we have Kim Fratto, who's the assistant director of special education, wants to make a clarification on the severe, mild, moderate endorsements.
Thank you, Malia. Can you hear me?
Yes, thanks.
Okay, great. So just a clarification for the endorsement for severe and mild moderate, doesn't have to match the students taught. It's practice, but it doesn't have to. So a severe could teach mild moderate, a mild moderate endorsement could teach severe, vice versa. Does that help?
So the assignment, so if I had a mild moderate endorsement, I could have an assignment in severe and be qualified.
Yes.
Oh, great. I learned something new today.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you. So if you have, if you're trying to employ someone with an associate level license, but your LEA will not have an Apple program, then those educators have to be enrolled in either a university-based ed prep program, or if they're going to do special ed, then they can do the special ed Apple program through USBE. USBE is not doing any programs apart from special education. So if your LEA will not have an Apple program, they have to be enrolled in a university-based program. Yeah, so if you've got a current educator that has an LEA specific license, or they're in eminence, or you're trying to get them a new LEA specific license, as long as their background check is 5 years or newer, then they're going to be fine. That's the, so if any educator's background check is less than 5 years old, then they are automatically included in having an updated background check. Level 1 licenses are going to be reissued to show professional. That's part of our rollover process. Cactus will be down July 1 through July 13th. It'll be read only for those days. And then after that, it will say professional level license. Great question. So some LEAs are working with the regional service centers as part of their Apple program. Both the LEA and the Apple have different responsibilities. And so I would encourage you to talk to the director of your regional service center to ensure that you're both keeping the appropriate documentation. Apple and special education. So if you have an educator who wants to be in the Apple program for special education, they have to be in the USBE program. The two ways that someone can have an associate license in special education or preschool special education is to be enrolled in the educator preparation program at a university or to be in the USBE Apple S program. Those are the only two ways to do it with the associate. If you're joining with a regional service center, your regional service center is already taking care of your application. You just have to return assigned assurances, which all of those LEAs have done. Yeah, if you have teachers who have an associate license, but they're not going to be in an educational program, their associate license will be expired. If they're not currently enrolled in either a university-based program or an LEA or alternate program, if they're not in one of those two lanes, they can't be in the car. Okay, so then you would have to license them through the LEA specific process if they didn't qualify for the associate license. Yeah, the educator lookup tool will reflect if they have an associate educator license, a professional educator license, or an LEA specific. Yeah. These are great questions, you guys. Okay, so the great question, Kesha. This is the link for this recording. We're actually, once this is recorded, we're going to post it on the YouTube channel for USBE so that you can access it anytime and you don't have to remember, where did I put that link? It'll just be available to you. If you have questions regarding specific teachers, if it's an associate educator license question, Kimberly Howard is going to be the person to talk to. If it is related to ARL, Bonnie Smith is going to be the person to talk to. If it's related to Apple, then Lisa McLaughlin is the person to talk to. Otherwise, the general licensing email is the best way to get some of those specific things done, because then we can send it to make sure that the person who has the best expertise to answer your question will be available for that. Apple S is going to be Kathy Webb. And I bet as I say this, Kimberly Howard is typing her email in. You're still going to be able to run reports with Cactus. All of that will still exist and will be functional at least through the end of the school year, even if we start migrating into the USIM system. Okay, so this is a really important question. If you have hired somebody who has the letter that says, I qualify for the associate license, if you have an educator who qualifies for the educator license but will not be in an educator program, then their license will be expired. Okay, if they're not in an Apple program or they're not in a university program, they do not qualify for an associate license.
So
Yes.
I just wanted to clarify on that. So if they have that associate's license and they're doing the Apple program with you, they're okay.
Correct.
Okay.
Mhm. If you are working, if you have an associate educator license and you are working with your LEA for an Apple in an Apple program, the LEA doesn't have to have their own program if they're working with a regional service center. So if you are, I can't even remember who all of those LEAs are, but if they're working with the regional service center, then those service centers have submitted the application. We're not going to have a full cactus training. If you need some cactus training, please reach out to the licensing email and we can provide you with some of our videos of training that exist, but that's the extent of the training that we're going to be doing this year. So if someone has an associate license and is enrolled in your Apple program, then one of the requirements to be in the Apple program is that you provide the superintendent with their professional license plan and start that process. And so that's how we know. And I'm going to defer that process question to Lisa McLaughlin, who can speak to that. She can field those questions. The regional service centers, there's 4 in the state of Utah. 3 of them have already submitted and had their application approved. The other one is working on it or has submitted and not gotten through the approval process. You would want to contact your regional service center to see what your options are. I do know that just due to capacity, that if you're not already working with them, that they likely will not be able to support you this year. But I would encourage you to reach out to those directors. Yes, Robin, that's perfect. If you're working with educators who have an LEA specific license and you want to get them on the associate license and have your Apple program, that's delightful and perfect. And the more educators we can get to professional licensure eventually is the best. Current LEA licenses will expire. They either need to be on an associate and enrolled in a program, or they need to be on the new LEA specific and your school board has to enroll it or has to approve it. If you have someone who's finishing up APT or ARL in a different district, I'm going to encourage you to talk to Bonnie Smith about ARL, or the email is arl@schools.utah.gov to make sure they're going to qualify, because teaching in the same school is for a number of years is part of their requirement to be in ARL and APT. Awesome questions. Any additional questions, or do you want to get 45 minutes of your life back? I am super happy to do either. There's no competency-based application for the new LEA-specific license. The LEA governing board just approves the license. Awesome. I believe ARL is 2 years at full-time and 3 years half-time, but again, I can't remember all of the specifics. It's one of the challenges of having 16 license areas and 25 different ways to qualify for them. It's a lot easier with 3. Awesome. My goal is to do something like this every 6 weeks or so, especially as we start getting into the rest of the summer and into the school year, just to make sure that we are all on the same page and that we're ensuring that our educators are appropriately licensed so that we can ensure funding and really provide our students with the best education possible. So again, if you have any questions, please reach out, please contact us. We're happy to help. We definitely appreciate your patience as we all navigate this new system and figure out where to go from here. Yes. I don't know who Stein is, but yes, that's correct. If they're not in an Apple program and they're not in a university program, the LEA specific is the appropriate way to license them until they can get into a program. Yes. So if you have a current LEA specific license holder that took the content praxis, then that helps them meet the minimum content requirements that they need for the associate. And those content requirements are the same. LEA endorsement only lasts for 3 years, at which point you would have to resubmit to USB to the superintendent to figure that out or to extend that. And since that is multiple years down the road, I'm not even thinking about that process right now. It's got to be phase 8 or 12. Okay, if there are no other questions, then we're going to end. Again, this recording will be available on YouTube. It probably will be up later this week. And if you have any questions, please reach out and let's just jump in and we can get it all done together. Hope you are all staying safe and sane, and hopefully the sun comes back and it stops snowing in Park City. Hey, have a great day, everyone.